The first thing is citizens to be heard. Hearing no citizens, we'll move on. So at our last meeting, we approved the minutes from October 17th, although since Neil abstained, we didn't officially have a quorum, so we will.
I motion to approve the minutes from October 17th.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I will abstain again.
All right, thanks. And the second is to approve the minutes from November 7th.
I'll move those. Okay. Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Wait, I'm sorry, I was
Abstain.
absent.
All right, great. So then moving into kind of the meat of our meeting is to pick up where we left off. The committee did a really good job moving forward with outlining our guidelines for the program and then also the criteria. But didn't want to approve everything. There's a couple things we still wanted to maybe think about and readdress. And then also have our other committee members present before we made any final decisions. So I don't have the page numbers numbered, but I think if we can jump to the RAPTAC project guidelines. And the first thing underneath there is that for us to adopt either separately or as a whole, a draft sort of mission statement or guiding statement that we have. And it says supporting and promoting recreational, cultural, arts, and parks facilities and programs to benefit the Moab community.
Do you need a motion on that?
We can pass it as a whole, but just wanted to make sure that we
Oh,
were aware of it. Not any edits, fine tuning.
Sounds good.
Okay.
No, I like them.
Yeah, simple.
And then especially for the members that weren't there, if you have any questions on the bullet points, I don't know if we need to go through them individually, or I can kind of highlight some of the things that we had talked about. And the first one was the idea of capital projects and how long they might need to be available to the public. And so I put a generic statement of our general guideline would be 10 years, but this time frame can vary depending on project specifics. So for instance, if it's maybe a very small, low-budget art piece, it may not be expected to last 10 years. If it's a higher project, playground, as we talked about, we would expect it to be longer for 10. But we want to put that guideline out there so that people know that these projects are meant to be around. And then if we see anything in any application, we can kind of address that as we're approving the project.
So just to be clear, it's the bullet point that says 5-year, but you're saying 10-year.
Well, that was the bullet point from last year, or the first draft was
Okay.
5.
Okay.
And then we kind of
So it's
discussed it.
changed to 10-year. Okay.
Let's see, I think the other one, verifying that most likely for the length of the RAP tax, but certainly for this year, that the project must take place within city limits.
I like the idea of including or on city property.
We could do that. Right now, that would take a change in our ordinance. So
Okay.
the ordinance that went along with the tax
Okay.
doesn't say that. I think it's something we would like to change. And don't think we need to hold up this year's process.
Okay.
Right,
Yep.
right.
But we can. If we feel
For
really
next-
strongly
For
about
next
it.
year.
Yep. Let's see. The match, I think everyone was okay with. Any entity can apply for up to 20% of the funds in any given year.
I'm sorry, so on the bullet points, it seemed like there weren't, maybe I'm missing, did I miss?
I think you might be reading the first, so last meeting, we had a draft that we had
I just have a lot
updated.
of vague questions.
Okay.
So are we not, that's right under the guidelines. Is it a different, from the 11/7 meeting minutes? Or
If
did
you,
we-
actually, if you pass the minutes into we've taken our discussion from the last meeting and updated the guidelines.
And that
that's-
was in that packet?
It's in the packet.
Not under 1017, not under 11/7.
It's under where it says approval of REP tax project guidelines.
Okay, all right. Got it. Okay, sorry, I spent hours on it.
Oh, Well, hopefully your questions fall in line with what our discussion was.
Great. Well, okay.
Yeah, if you have any questions, we would be happy to let you know what our thought
Well,
process
this
was.
project guidelines, isn't, yeah, I don't see that bullet point you just brought up.
The,
For instance,
the 20%.
okay, all right. Got ya. I don't see the 10-year, is the 10-year written in there? Oh, it says 5 years here.
Yeah, I think you're working, that, if it's saying 5 years, you're working off the copy that was first presented at our last meeting.
Okay, all right.
Annie, are you looking to adopt these tonight?
If we
If we
can,
can.
that would be great. Should we go into,
Well, why don't I make a motion, because this did include almost everything we talked about, and so why don't I make a motion that we adopt the RAP tax project guidelines and RAP tax application as distributed?
that's great. I just want to make sure
Right.
that everyone understands what we're voting on.
Yeah,
Okay, I'll second
Okay.
the motion.
I guess I do have one question.
No, this is a,
And
if
then-
we vote on that now, it's
Yeah.
going to be a quick night.
Yeah, so it says if an applicant such as a local artist does not have such status, then they are recommended to a partner with an organization that does. I just want to ensure that, like, I am in favor of that, but then with the application, you know, we had talked about the, there being those, like, the two questions, the filter questions of like, are you a 501c3? No, then,
Oh,
You
or
can't
I can update the language
go
to say, or
Good.
partnering with.
yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, good point. I want to thank the staff for doing all the research, getting all the material for us to look at other cities, what they're doing, and then packaging this in a pretty basic way for us to understand, so thank you.
So I guess, Molly, since it's open for discussion, do you have any questions regarding
No,
this?
I had read it through, it just, I had it was the same exact heading as the previous packet, so once again,
No, that makes
I
sense.
just, yeah,
Yeah.
didn't understand, there's no date or page number, you know, saying that it was the updated. I'm too quick at the headings, I guess.
Okay. I guess the only,
Same exact heading in first couple paragraphs.
And then one just question, Art, that we could think through is that we had talked about if you have an open application or project that you can't apply again. I'm just wondering if there's going to be an overlap between when we announce for applications versus the end of their year, or if that would be an issue, or,
I feel the more lenient and open we are would be better, because I think it's gonna be a difficult, start off. So which line is that?
so if it's on, so we have said, if the organization has a currently open RAPTAC project, they're ineligible to apply until it's completed, which I agree with.
Okay,
But I just didn't know if there might be some overlap between our call for applications before the end of the year or not. Just something to kind of think about. And maybe that's something we can gauge next year if we need to.
right,
Could you say, like, clarify that your check wouldn't be cut until you get the reports in? Because I know for community contributions, the applications would open before that full year when you got your
Oh, good,
check was
yeah.
actually, like, signed and ready to get to you. So it could be that window in between, they could still turn something in before they actually got the funding for the next.
Okay, then we could tentatively approve it until their project closes. Okay. I think maybe we can keep that as an administrative clarification. I don't know if we need to write it in here, but that's great. Thanks, Kelly.
yeah, I'm not sure I understood her questions.
Oh, well, I was, as I said, that, so she manages the community contributions program for the city, and she was saying they kind of ran into that same thing where they would open applications for the next cycle before the cycle had completed, and so that they would tentatively approve a project, but they wouldn't start to administer any funds until that first one was closed. That
Yeah.
works.
Yeah, I guess I have a question about the matching, because I guess it could be, it's either direct or indirect match, indirect being like in-kind, is that what you mean? So, I just have a question about, let's say that it's in-kind, it would seem to me that in-kind, they would satisfy that requirements once their project started. So is that going to be allowable?
So everything starts, so their match starts accruing after we award the project. Is that what you're saying? Yeah,
Well, actually, it's kind of a question,
we didn't make that a clarification, but I think we can,
Yeah, what really is going to satisfy that indirect match, and can that be satisfied after the grant's approved and the project begins?
yes.
Otherwise, you're doing all this in-kind before the project even starts. I'm probably not being real clear
No,
on this.
No, I think that's a great clarification, and I do think that the match should start after we've approved and awarded the project. Everyone agree with that?
Yeah, like, I don't know if like volunteer hours would count as a
Yeah.
match, or what. Yeah, I haven't actually worked with, like indirect matches all that much, so I don't always know what qualifies.
Well, volunteer hours would be, I think, anything you're not paying hard cash for, but it also still have to kind of qualify under what isn't eligible with the other thing. So if you have a volunteer instructor who's working on that, yes, that time could work. If you get materials donated in kind, which might be a common one for us, all of that would be after the city approves the project.
Yeah, so I guess, if we do approve an application that has in-kind matching, that it would just need to be satisfied by the time they submit their final report. Does that make sense?
That does make sense. And then in the application process, we also ask them to kind of outline their match, list what it is, if it's in kind or direct. So we'll kind of have an idea of what that is, but I agree.
Okay.
And then one thing we didn't tackle in this process, which, because we have time, is like the reporting requirements and documentation. And I didn't think we needed that detail yet to open up the process.
Yeah, and I just had a question on it was on the application. I guess it was next to the last page, but it says, 501c3 determination letter, list of board of directors, that page. And under disclaimer and signature, it says, if this application leads to employment, I understand that false or misleading information, blah, blah.
Oh,
That
that's a
sounds
good-
like an employee to
That's a
me.
good catch, and we had used this as a sample application, and we can probably remove that for this. I don't
Yeah,
think
it
it will.
didn't seem to.
Good. No,
Yeah.
great catch.
Wow, nice reading the fine print.
I have some questions, if, Barbara, if you're done.
Yes.
So, going back to what was said about the currently open project, I do think it is problematic as it's worded, because it says you're ineligible to apply. And I think we could probably just fix that by saying something like, they may apply but are ineligible to receive funding until the project is completed. Because I think that will certainly, I assume we'll have similar organizations applying probably for multiple years, would be my guess. And then if we just want to just run through the list, if that makes sense.
Sure.
For some reason, I didn't catch this last time, but under the allowable expenditures, just below that section, the marketing advertising, it says promotion of the organization's projects, programs. I feel like that should have a qualifier. It's promotion of the organization's project or program funded by the RAP tax.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, just I think a little more clarity there would be probably helpful. On the next page, What is a non-cultural celebration?
I looked that up a lot. I researched that, I wanted that removed.
I don't know what that
It would be
means.
an animal or a plant. There's, cultural falls into many things, but the
Okay.
best thing I could find would be a celebration about an animal or a plant. It'd be non-cultural because it doesn't rely to religion, language, dress, customs. I
Okay.
can't think of an example of a non-cultural.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
I didn't know if we were being superfluous of putting that in, that it could be removed, because I could not find an example of a non-cultural celebration. Does
No.
anyone
And
know?
it depends on whose culture you're talking about.
Well, the thing is, then it's cultural, if it's a culture.
Yeah, for lack of a better description, I think they wanted to make sure there was significance to something that's not just a party.
My Druid celebration of the New Year, would that be a cultural?
On that note, Neil, on the not to be used for, I wondered if we're trying to be too specific, but like the Ephraim City did in their not to be used for said, and projects that do not fit within the purpose of funding priorities, or, so rather than being like, oh, it wasn't on the list, just to say that the funds may not be used for funding that doesn't fit within the purpose of the grant. I mean, that's sort of like an overkill, but it also seems overkill to pick very specific things, like.
Well, I think the things that people, that we know can't be funded, it's nice to let people know who, but it's not, we can't cover everything.
Right. So would a phrase such as, if it does not fit within their application project, some kind of wording like that?
something like for non-approved project expenditures or something like
Yeah,
that.
just some kind of overall thing, so you'd be able to come to them and say, that's inappropriate use of the funds.
Sure. We can add that as a bullet point, or we can say, this list is not inclusive, or,
Yeah, something like that.
I think I just have one more thing, and then I will stop talking.
so.
On the very last, it was unclear if the evaluation criteria is that being voted on as part of the rest of this packet? I assume yes.
We can do the packet and then do that separately if you'd like.
It doesn't really matter to me, but I don't know, I also don't know what, not only that matter is spelled wrong, but I will leave that aside, but value of supporting matter, I'm not really sure what that means either, as far as a quality of proposed project evaluation.
It's the first one.
Is it supposed to be material and it just?
Material,
Okay, there we
yes,
go.
Yes.
I thought it was a fancy term, like a lawyer term,
No.
like Derma matter.
Okay, now it makes a lot of
Material.
sense.
Yes. Okay.
Well, having moved through all that and onto the valuation criteria,
Well, do you want to go back to the application real quick in case we have any
Okay.
other? So I will take out non-cultural celebration because we don't know what that means.
Without specific language on that, can we still vote on an amended version? Okay.
Well, I was just going to remove that as an item and then just indicate that this list maybe isn't inclusive of everything that isn't eligible. Any other comments or thoughts on the application?
I would make a substitute motion
Sure.
to adopt the, what are we calling it? The RAP tax project guidelines as amended.
I'll second it.
Right, all in favor?
Aye.
Congratulations, that's big.
Good job, good job.
Well, yeah, thanks to you and the other city staff for
Yeah.
working through it.
And then we can kind of talk about the criteria, and we don't have to be extremely specific in the criteria, but I think it's nice both for the committee to know what they're evaluating and also the applicants.
On that note of the evaluation criteria, I think it's great. I would like to add something maybe within the community need of another bullet point, maybe so much not for that specific application evaluation, but for the overall process of how that project falls within to the percent of art, parks, or cultural. So meaning, like, say we're looking at various applications, what if we're all doing like art, and then one maybe, it's like, oh, but this is a trail or a project. And we'd be like, oh yeah, since we have 80% art, I didn't know if maybe within the criteria we would have a ranking, that if it was falling into a percent within the cultural art park, or, does that make any sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Or as just another ranking check, or that would add to why we favored that, or why we gave a point of, and I'm not wording that really well, I thought. But I like the idea of originally yours coming up with some sort of graph or bell curve, but within the point system, if we could word somehow how the project falls into the percent of the overall category of art, parks, and cultural.
Or maybe I interpret that as you wanted to distribute between arts, parks, and,
Yeah, but there
Separately?
could be something that did all of it, you know,
Oh,
like their
gotcha.
project might be very inclusive, or it might be more specific, yeah. So how would we rank it of it, what it fell into?
That's too confusing to me.
Is it?
Yeah.
Well,
I
so
don't
like,
know what you're trying to say.
I don't know, like, for instance, the art trail or arts, you have the sculpture that's art, but then it's also part of a trail system. And then it's, you know, well, since some of this is benefiting the community, like, is it benefiting cultural? Is it benefiting art? Is it benefiting?
I think that'll be a great problem to have. I think we ought to, anyway.
You know, the one thing you could do is maybe under the benefits to the community, you could have a bullet, something like uniqueness as compared to other project applications. But that also makes you go back, right, as you're working through applications.
Yeah,
It's sort of like
yeah.
it's an afterlook, which may not make a lot of sense in some ways if you're trying to be. Depends on how much, I mean, you ultimately do have to compare projects and proposals against one another. So it could fall in there, I think.
That's what I was just thinking, if we were trying to compare, or when we're presenting to the city of its evaluation criteria, that maybe that would weigh in if it had a different avenue of the WAP.
Is the evaluation criteria, like, does the public see this, or is this just internally?
I think, well, we can have it however, and I'm thinking, like, so we have a couple of bullet points underneath a bigger header, and it's not that you're necessarily assigning points per question, but these are the bullet points that help you come up with your score, what you should be thinking about in developing the overall score for that block.
Yeah, so I guess we could ignore my little point, because it would fall into just current need, or, you know, it could be, maybe there's a lot of need for
And,
culture.
yeah, and I think that the different, I mean, you guys are here because you have different viewpoints within the community, and so what you consider a huge need may not be what the person next to you thinks is the
Yeah.
biggest need, and that's great, that's why you're here, so you just kind of define and explain the need that you saw being met.
I think, in my mind, it's like there's a tendency to want to group things, right? You want to have like these clean delineations between, oh, this is an art project and this is that. But I think in reality, we're probably going to get a lot of applications that are fuzzy on that
Okay.
end, you know?
All right.
And so maybe we could do some, that's just like what I imagine happening. But, you know, could we add something somewhere that's just like, you know, the committee will do our best to fund a breadth of, you know, different projects across the spectrum of arts parks and, but not necessarily including that in the evaluation criteria.
Not required, but
But it's, it's part of our mission, and
I think it's a good goal to have, and I think hopefully by the makeup of the committee in itself, we would
Yeah.
be diversified in that. I think that's great. And then, like you said, kind of scoring, if you're, at some point, you start to compare them to each other, because sometimes your choices are that good.
Yeah.
And I've been on interview panels where you interview the first person and you're like, they're amazing, they're hired, and then you get to the fifth person and you don't know who to hire, because they're all that good, so there might be some of that.
And then we also, we would also check and see what the city is doing with their 80% of these funds. If one year it's predominantly athletics related or rec related or parks, that's understandable. And maybe the next year you say, okay, this year we're going to try a little bit more towards cultural organization, whatever, or arts. So I think we have to be aware of what the city's doing, and we try to support that. And
Yeah, I don't know if that subjectiveness of a criteria maybe would just fall under quality of proposed project, meaning that it falls into the definition of RAP. Maybe that's all I was looking for, or not to rank it within this RAPness.
I was reading the Grantwell report again, and for all of those who may not know what that is, I only know a little bit about it, but I guess it was a group came from Salt Lake City, from BYU, and looked at, I guess, a few years ago, how the city might use these funds and set up their committee, right? And when I was looking at it earlier today, I like their scoring rubric where they give some, filling needs gaps, and they have a description, what would mean excellent under that, and then they have what's poor in their description. So I thought that was pretty helpful to me. So perhaps we could revisit that and
Yeah.
Can you describe how they defined excellent or poor?
Well, for example, it says filling needs gaps, if an excellent or a rating of 5. The proposed program addresses an unmet need within the community, will deliver services to historically underserved segments of Moab's population, and/or has the potential to become an integral part of the Moab community experience. So that's a 5. Existing community programs and resources already fulfill the needs addressed by the proposed program, and this is one that would get a 1. The program's target population is already fully served, or doesn't have the program to become the potential to become an integral part of Moab's community. So they give some range there. So something like that may help as we start to think about ranking and rating projects.
Yeah. So she had the BYU study, so you just found that on the internet? BYU study?
I had gotten this previously. This was from, I got this from Teresa King.
Yeah, it was. You're familiar with it?
I think it was in another, like a city council agenda packet.
Yeah, probably.
Presented to the council.
Yeah, this wasn't anything distributed for this group, but I had seen it before, and I said, oh, I remember that.
Okay, yeah, we can share that with you guys as well.
Yeah, I haven't read through that completely. But I mean, the one that you just read out made a lot of sense to me, making sure that we're not duplicating services that don't need to be duplicated.
Yeah, so,
In some cases, you
Just a
just
thought.
need more spots for something, or you just need to
right.
add to it, but, yeah.
That seems covered in the benefits to the community, sort of. demonstrate community need. The bullet point sort of covers it. You could give it points. Are other projects or programs already addressing this need? Anyway. I like the evaluation criteria.
One thing that I would be willing to move forward on this, but I also am curious what others' thoughts are on, there's the number of Moab residents by age user group served by the project. I think that is a helpful number if it is also included with like hours or something else served, because you can serve thousands of people for like 15 minutes, and is that like impactful? Or are you serving 5 kids, but it's over the course of like many, many days, and it's really impactful for them? So I guess I would be, I don't know how to best reflect that in the evaluation, but.
Yeah, so the way that this is the way this is sort of proposed, it has, like I said, the general category, and then sub-bullets aren't necessarily, this is a 1 out of a 5 if this. It's, here are a set of factors to consider
Okay.
in that. And so you might come to the table saying, I've read this, we're hitting this many people and it means this much, and someone else might read it a little bit differently. And that's not making it too subjective, but it's also giving you some justification for why you're scoring it that way. So if that's making sense.
Okay, yeah, that's clarifying.
So we just want to make sure that it comes to the table, feels good in how they're describing the need, because it will be different for everyone. And also enough that our applicants understand what we're evaluating.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
So is that, like, for example, the number of Moab residents by age, et cetera, is that a question in the application? Do they know they need to provide that?
Yeah, so these mirror a couple of the questions that are in our application.
I don't necessarily want to overcomplicate it, but I do wonder if breaking out some of I know the bullets they give context to the larger evaluation criteria, but whether it actually would be more beneficial to break some out into 1 to 5s. Because it's like, I think we're gonna have to have a conversation as a group probably that's like, is 25 like the greatest thing you've ever seen? Or is 25 just like, they did all the things that they needed to do for the application, right? Or like, is that a 20? Or I think in some ways, if we had more broken out points, it probably brings people a little closer together at the end of the day, as opposed to sort of taking all of these subpoints and thinking about them and then figuring out where in 25 that falls. But it makes it more complicated, obviously.
Yeah, and it's up to the committee how they feel comfortable with the process and the application. And I think one comment we're going to hear is, we did get the comment, if we're not speaking into our mics, the people on YouTube can't hear us. So when you speak.
And then what about weighting the answers?
We can come up with the evaluation.
I mean, like, because here it says on the evaluation criteria, 25 points. So quality and clarity of the project goals, just for example, maybe that category, the quality of the proposed project is the most important, and we would give that more weight than the organization's history and ability to, I don't know, I'm just throwing out here how we might, address some of those differences. Like a project, man, this really does everything. Well, it should get a little extra weight, when another one is just doing enough to meet the criteria.
Well, maybe what I'm trying to hear is maybe within if we're looking at this as in quarters, then there's a 1 through 5 within each quarter. So as an application's looked at, you could be like, ooh, that was a 3 under quality. And then, so you'd give it, wow, a third of 25. Okay, that's getting complicated. The thing is, you might have to revisit it once you had if you had to then dish out some competing applications, you could come back and revisit it, just to be able to look at. Would that make any sense? Is that?
Yeah, I mean, it's the committee's criteria, so we can,
Yeah.
Maybe I will complicate it further by saying, what if there was another way to do it that was more on like a ranked basis? Like if we have all the applications in front of us, I don't know. I guess maybe I need clarification on how do we each if we're each individually scoring these, are then they coming together and we're taking the average score and then what?
Discussing them. maybe,
Discussing
or
them.
to sway-
and
to sway
I
someone.
think the only area that might become complicated is if a member of this committee has an application on the table. If they were all scored individually, that makes it very easy for them to recuse themselves from one score.
Okay.
It makes it harder for them to start to rank amongst the others.
That makes sense. Okay.
I think we're going to be a lot smarter. You know, we're going to know a whole lot more after we've received the applications and we start to go through this. Yeah, right now it's, you know, you can think of, well, what about this? What about that? And we'll know a lot more.
And I think if we allow, when I've been on committees that had point-based criteria, I think a really helpful thing to do is you come together, you've got your scores and your rationales, but you're allowed to change them too, right?
Yeah,
And
that's all, yeah.
and really it's if there's outliers where it's like, okay, we're between like 12 and 17. Well, someone's giving it 5. Okay, why are we giving it 5? Do you want to bring that up a little bit, you know? And maybe they're seeing something that others aren't. And I think as long as we have that ability and the time to really dig in and talk about where we see value or see issues, for lack of a better word, that we'll probably be able to find ourselves in. I think we'll probably find that we're fairly close on a lot of this stuff. And if they're really close and we're like, oh my goodness, there's 3 projects in there, one won't get funded and they're all within a couple points on the average, then as Richard mentioned, it's a good problem to have. But we may have to, you know, revisit those projects again or something and dig in a little bit more.
Sounds good.
Yep, so is that the idea, is for us to individually review them?
Well, I think, and a lot of the ones I've been on have been similar, like you read them individually and score them, and then sometimes a group discussion you can learn something, or, you know, so that can definitely help, but I said, we just need to make sure that we're staying away from changing a score if there's a conflict. If someone is proposing a project and then they're in the room and this starts to change the score, that gets a little bit more complicated.
Okay. Is it 25, 100 points total for a reason, or?
Just seems the way the world works.
It's a nice round number.
You could do it 10, 10, 10.
I don't know why, but for some reason, scoring something out of 25 just is like. But 100 makes sense to me. I will not die on that hill.
At
But
100%.
yeah. No. I was just curious.
Think about it as 1 through 5 and then multiply
We
accordingly.
could make it out of 40, or we can change that.
I guess
And I
it
think,
gives you
I
some
mean,
room.
we don't necessarily have to have this 100%, but I just know that we need to be able to justify and defend any decision that we make. So there's enough continuity of how we're all feeling about the the criteria, that we feel good that we're scoring them from the same lens.
And I think we should go into this understanding this is our first go-round. And we will likely say, geez, we never even thought of that for next year. So is this perfect? Probably not. You know, can we make improvements? Of course. But at least this will get us going and get, you know.
And in looking at a lot of examples, there was that one perfect one. I think we're hitting on all the same ideas. I don't know that there is a perfect. It's
Right,
hard.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, to go back to what you were saying about maybe there are a few things that we could break out 1 through 5. I don't know what those are right now without putting a whole lot more thought into it. And I would be comfortable moving forward with this for this year and then kind of returning to it.
I think the only thing we might want to know tonight, is there something we just missed, or if these are the categories that we are looking at.
I think it's a good start.
So do we need a motion to approve?
I don't think we need a motion for the evaluation criteria at this point. But I think it's good, like I said, as long as we know that these are the key areas that we will be evaluating on. Some of the smaller stuff might shake out later.
Yeah, I think we're going to learn a lot from an open house that may change some of those subcategories, especially if the public, you know, if the main 4 criteria, I mean, I think that looks really good.
Yeah, I just foresee in my own mind just being able to make a judgment ranking under one of these bullets of how rappy it is. To make it, yeah, anyway, that's just my own personal hang-up. Yeah, and that will fall into that. I think everyone will witness it a little bit. They'll be like, whoa, that's 100% art. Yeah. Maybe. I think it will be fuzzy, but anyway, did we motion?
Well, we can make a motion, or we can,
So I'll make a motion that we adopt, well, I guess we need these going to our open house, or could we do it after our open house?
well, I can say from looking online at other entities, they don't necessarily give the score sheet, some do.
Right.
But I just think what we should be clear in letting our applicants know what areas we are scoring them on.
Right.
And if it's down to this specific score sheet or just these general criteria, it's up to us.
Sorry, were you going to say?
Go ahead.
The more I look at this, the more I mean, I would be totally happy with the 4 categories. Maybe taking the points off for now, because I think maybe Richard was getting at it earlier, but like, is the organization's history, like including history of past city funding, is that as important as the other 3 categories? Is that, you know, if someone is if there's a new organization with a great project that fills a great need, but they're going to get a 5 on that category because they don't have a history of past funding, they're new, they may have, you know, solid finances, but not, and I know we have discretion, obviously, in that process, but, you know, maybe that's a 10, maybe that whole category is a 10 or something compared to it, and demonstrated community need and benefits the community reach 30, and then the quality is 25 or something like that.
Okay, sure, we can.
And that gets to my weighting of,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah,
just
you were getting there for sure.
Yeah, so, thank you.
Yeah. I agree. I don't know if I'm comfortable moving forward necessarily like with them like adopting anything specific right now.
Yeah, I think the application process is probably a good start.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
Okay.
It's a great discussion. I think it's a very helpful discussion.
This is related, I think. I would recommend that when we have an example packet filled out for someone So they say, well, what do you mean by this? What are you looking for? Maybe we have a sample that addresses some of the questions.
An example application?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we say, this is the kind of information we're looking for. And here's, you know,
Yeah.
whatever company, make up some, or some artist, you know, whatever, just a sample packet that the staff fills out, and you say, okay, this, and you give them to an applicant if they need advice and help.
I think it might be easier to answer questions. I don't know if we would have the sample application for them. But if anyone had any questions, I think that
Okay.
we can all be resources to anyone who's, hey, what about this? But, you know, here's a sample application. I'm not sure,
Okay.
but.
I'm sure there are going to be some who will say, well, what do they mean by this? What do they want? Oh, okay. But we're prepared, or staff is prepared then to address those concerns. Okay.
Anyone else have other thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's not a common practice that I've seen to have sample
No? Okay.
ones, but, you know, it's good to consider. Yeah, I agree. I think just making it really clear on the website and all the materials that go out that, like, hey, this is the first time, and we're here to answer questions and
Okay.
just be really available.
Yeah, so I know I just kept picking on this Ephraim City packet with their website, which is so succinct and short. But, right, it's application procedures, it'll just be there. Review the guidelines, download the app, review the criteria. Right, it would be, boom. Any questions? Annie?
Okay.
Okay, so, any other thoughts? I think it's a good point. So the next is discussing what our next steps are in timeline. And that's kind of the fun part. And that would be when we want to announce the program, when we want a deadline, a potential at the last meeting. For those of you who weren't here, we had talked about an open house so that any potential applicant can come and we can be there to answer questions in person and not just getting a cold application and not knowing what that means. If we're comfortable, I think things probably won't happen between now and the holidays. So getting an early start next year. And we can do, with the application, now that we have it finalized, we can start to do more promotion for those who are interested. But I would propose potentially opening this right after the holidays.
Yeah.
And hosting an open house in January.
Yeah.
And then I don't know how long you think it's appropriate to keep these open. A potential deadline of March 1st. I don't know if that's too long, not long enough.
8
I have
weeks,
plenty of
well,
time.
I think earlier in January, the better,
Okay.
you know. But that seems like sufficient deadline to me.
I agree. I wonder if there's another event or something going on that could be in conjunction. Like, could we just tack on to something else?
Something more fun.
I just worry about, like, because I think for folks who have done the community contributions process before, I don't know if they're necessarily going to come, but I could be wrong. I could be wrong.
And if I had a couple hours that weren't that productive, it wouldn't, giving the opportunity would be fine, yeah.
I just hope before the open house, we have some very clear defining, because, yeah, otherwise they're not going to fall even into the categories of the RAP.
Well, right now, as we've adopted them, the guidelines and the application should be clear.
Yeah.
I mean, people will have questions, but that should be
Right. I mean,
clear
if
enough to.
it's- If it's put out to the public, yeah. Just saying the general public right now, if they see RAP, they're just gonna come and inundate you with yelling
Oh,
and screaming.
gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
They're not gonna come to apply or a thing. So,
Yeah, I don't think I have a full understanding of, like, the conversation in the community around rap and
A lot of people feel they voted and they're, they want their money represented, and they think the RAP tax committee is just to appropriate all that money. So someone might come that's been emailing Rainey Desari about the baseball fields, and they're gonna come and say, I just want the baseball fields fixed, or, so anyway.
Yeah, I was wondering if maybe there's 4 weeks until the next holiday. If there's anything that we could put in the papers in the interim about the, like, we can get an open house date, we could start advertising, but maybe there's a way to clarify within that advertisement a little bit about what the committee is doing too, because I agree, I think I've had multiple people ask like, oh yeah, you're gonna, the city's gonna put more bike paths in. It's like, well, maybe, but I'm not gonna have anything to do with that.
submit an application.
So it'd be clear that it's the application process for that, application.
I wonder if
Maybe-
like a Q&A style
Like
event.
a FAQ page.
Yeah, or like an I'm just trying to think of something that I would attend or like that I would find really helpful if I were an applicant. Would be, like an interview of like, what is the RAP tax committee? What are they doing and what aren't they doing? And like maybe the event is kind of centered around this like, I don't know, the beginning is someone intentionally interviewing with specific questions and then opening it up to everyone.
No, I think that's great. And I think, like you said, we do have some time before the holidays to get a press release out about what is going on. I mean, public perception is really hard and getting the word out, but it's just I think we've always been consistent with our messaging, and we just continue to be really clear and consistent as we move forward. But yeah, I think getting a press release out there, we can try to get some radio time or some interviews going about that now.
Or even, not the press release, but for a while, the city would do a little square, like an ad, but if it just said, there'll be an open house in 2023, applications for.
Well, I think that, to get in front of that, what the open house is about, and it's
Right.
about applying for the RAP tax. So I think, like you make a good point about how we move this forward and what's going to help clarify and what might further confuse people.
So I would, regarding the deadline
Yes.
for the application, I would put it, whenever the open house is like 6 to 8 weeks after that date
Okay.
would be the closing date. Because we don't know when the open house is
We
yet.
can kind of outline that now if we'd like.
Yeah.
Is that something we maybe want to put in stone here?
Sure.
Do you have access? I'm assuming we might do it at the Mark.
I was thinking about that date as well. Let me pull that down.
Yeah, if you have their calendar.
In the interim, I was wondering if, when we kick off the press release and maybe some ads in the paper, that ideally maybe like Q&A interview in the paper with you about rap would be really helpful, I think.
Yeah.
I think people read those. And you could lay out all the things.
And you guys can maybe feed me some questions you know are misunderstood. That would be great.
Yeah. And I'm sure that, I want to go back. I'm sure the open house event will be great. I just jumping straight into like event
And
planning
that's assuming,
mode.
but it's true though, because it's assuming someone wants to come in their evening to
Right, I feel like
a
I
meeting.
created a little can of worms there, just saying for the open house, or even streamlining it, just for the for the applications.
Yeah.
That could solve everything, just
well-
really clear
Like,
explanation of the open house.
do you want to apply for funding for the RAP tax? If yes, attend this event. Something like that. Like, here's who we're looking for specifically to come. If you fit this profile, then this is an
Correct,
event for
yeah.
you.
Yes.
I know that I will certainly be notifying, telling every artist I run into and every organization in town. So I'll be doing that, and hopefully others who you know of, because you're on here representing the community, get out there and seek applications.
Yeah.
We don't, you know, so.
The ARC has a newsletter, the MRAC has a newsletter, and I think the Recreation Department has networks as well where they can send out, an invite to the open house for potential applicants. To get it out into all those networks.
And we'll get something on KZMU about this too, and that'll be a separate conversation, but we'll do that.
Okay, so, yeah.
Ready. So, for the month of January, all of the money meetings are open in both of the rooms, the stage room and the dance room. And then, Tuesday evenings, the stage room is open for all of the rooms. Wednesdays are a little bit, booked with some regular programming, as are Thursdays, but Mondays and Tuesdays are open for the whole month.
The 16th is a holiday too, so that would be a good one.
I'm gone January 2nd through the 27th, so I'm not going to be there, most likely.
Hope it's fun.
That's going to be fun.
Good. Yeah. Anyone else have a preferred date?
I would say earlier is better, just to keep everything earlier, right? If we're going to tier the application date, I think the week of right after New Year's is too, people are still spun out
Yes.
from holiday travel. So like, yeah, like the 9th or 10th, I think would be
Okay.
ideal.
Tuesdays are council days, and I mean, maybe that doesn't matter to anyone.
Monday's okay for me.
The 9th? Any other thoughts? Is Mondays tough? They work for
Yeah,
us so
Mondays
far.
can be tough for a lot of people. What about what's the date of that Wednesday? Is Wednesday a good day?
The 11th and the dance room will be available.
What was that?
There is a room available on the 11th.
What about Annie's conflict? Or is it better to keep?
Oh, this is a Wednesday. And Tuesdays are fine. The January 11th?
Okay.
That's something that would start, what time does the city usually do things like, they start at like 4 or?
I think we would have it open for, like open house, so there isn't one presentation necessarily, but we'd be there available to answer questions. We can continually, if new people come in, but maybe keeping it a little more informal.
So this January 11th would be for the open house?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I'm trying to look and see if there are any like competing events, but I'm not Googling very fast.
Has the city decided how they're going to spend the majority of the RAP tax money?
Yeah, so
Is
for
that-
this year, I think I mentioned this in the past meeting, but we are just embarking on a Parks Master Plan, which we have not done, which we've never had a comprehensive plan of all of our needs and projects and potential projects for the city. And one thing we really want to do is make sure that these dollars, even though it does seem like a large sum of money, when you start looking at some of the capital improvement needs that are in our parks, they're large. So we want to make sure that we're really using this money. So and that planning process is starting now, and it'll take roughly about a year from now. So there's a chance that we will forego this year to make sure that we are, one, hitting the priorities that are most important to the public that we'll find out through the master planning process. And also, we might need 2 years worth of funds to actually accomplish a project like that. So.
I just want to be able to explain why we're only allocating 90,000 or whatever that number is. Yeah.
But then are you,
Yeah.
well, off the record, are you saying it's accumulating? So it'll be the third year of the tax collection?
Well, we were just sort of finishing our first year. But yes, the money can only be spent on these projects. So we have a dedicated account where that money is,
Right.
it doesn't mix with any other city
Yeah.
funding.
Yeah, no, I just thought maybe it could be going to ongoing capital improvements, like the pool filter, or, you know, to help with the budget, so.
I mean, it's eligible, but like I said, we said with the limited bond money, we really want to make sure we're spending it wisely. So, I mean, and we don't want to necessarily do some ongoing maintenance and then have no project at the end, so.
Yeah.
We're looking for, hopefully for this money to make an impact.
Yeah, just for my own clarification, so it's going to take about a year to do to
parks-
complete,
To complete a parks master plan.
yeah, master
correct.
plan, okay.
And it's the first ever Parks Master Plan?
It's our first comprehensive for the city, looking at everything we need, and we're at a point where a lot of our infrastructure is aging, so it's a good time to take a step back and make sure that we're getting the high priorities.
That's awesome.
It is exciting.
Okay, so the 11th is the open house?
And then, I don't know, Kelly, you've done some, what's that?
Do you wanna do like 3 to 7 and it's kind of when we want, or?
Yeah, I think so, because we've done some earlier, and I've been surprised, some people are ready, like, right after work, they want to come here and then get on with their evening, and some people come a little bit later. But I think earlier, I mean, obviously, overlap with after business hours, but earlier, in my experiences, tend to work a little better, but 3 to 7, and if there's nobody there, we'll probably stay till the end, but it's a good start. I think that's great. We'll start with that. And do you guys feel the need to meet before then? Or anything you guys want us to prepare and bring back to you? Or you feel we've got a good handle on it and moving forward?
Yeah, just that maybe we could get emailed the idea that of the open house announcement. Or,
Okay.
Yeah, just that, right?
Okay.
that needs to-
Yeah, I'll email you guys the materials, and if we do feel the need, something comes up, we can try to meet. If not, we'll see you in January.
And then, so we're talking 6 or 8 weeks after that for application deadlines?
Mm-hmm.
So if we left it at March 1st, that would be about
About right.
6 weeks, yeah. Sounds good. And I just have a question about, Molly provided this, a copy of Ephraim City's, I guess it's guidelines. So this seems pretty cool to me. So are you going to use this as your template, or?
For announcing it?
Well, as part of the package, I guess.
Oh, well, I think that our
Yeah, we
package,
approved like that template. Yeah, that's why I just kept pushing that how easy it was to read.
Yeah,
But,
yeah,
I think we approved our template.
okay, which is, okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I kept pushing that because I just felt it easy to read too, and I just kept getting confused why it was so easy, but I couldn't.
Yeah.
It's just so different, yeah.
Well, I wasn't, okay, so the RAP tax guidelines, I guess maybe I wasn't clear that this was sort of like the final, that this is what was going to go to the applicant, so.
yes.
Okay. I still think this is cool, the Ephraim City.
I found it easier.
Yeah. Anyway. Anything else? Okay, well, if I don't see you, I'm sure we'll be talking quite a bit, but welcome to the holiday season. And
Yeah.
thank you all so much. This has moved very rapidly and smoothly. So I think it's just a great committee that's, focused on getting the money available to the community.
Yep.
So thank you very much.
Let's be in touch on email about, maybe we need some shifts in the 4-hour open house.
And it might be actually a really good thing,
Yeah.
because that way we also won't have quorum that way.
Oh, yeah.
It'll help us in a couple ways as well. So I'll be in touch, but for now, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I will second that motion.
All in favor?
Right, thanks, Annie, for all you do.
Oh, thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
I saw you out there with the engineers or whatever, or whoever. Okay.
We're adjourned.